Hi, everybody. I'm Barb. I feel terrible following Bruce because my story is so completely different, and I think that's why they picked the three of us. All of us have very different stories. I was I was diagnosed with a liver disease or undiagnosed with one back in 1999. To this day, they still don't seem to know what I have. But the one thing that we knew was it was very similar to PBC, but I don't have the PBC marker. So we kind of treated things that way. And so I was put on the transplant list back in 2001, back before MELD existed, because had it existed, my MELD score would have been so high. I would have been transplanted immediately. My blood work was the highest they'd ever seen at Johns Hopkins. But I did really well. I looked great. I felt great. Everything was super. And so every year we would just, do an MRI and do the checks and stuff. And I'd see my hepatologist once or twice a year. And I did really well until 2016. And then in 2016, I just seemed to get much sicker again. And so had a real issue with that and was back at the hospital a lot, but I transferred to Georgetown. And so we were doing my standard 6-month MRI at that point, and I get the little notification from the place I had it done. It was not at the hospital, that said they had found a lesion on my liver. And I mean, time just stopped. I just freaked out. I had no idea what that meant. I knew it could mean cancer. So it was a little terrifying, and it ended up taking about 10 days, I guess it was, until it was confirmed. And just like that ad that says, you never forget when you hear the words, you have cancer, August 7th last year, in the middle of the pandemic, I get that call, and immediately called my two closest friends, and I don't have family. So they both ran to my house and said, screw the pandemic, we're hugging you. We don't care. We're here for you. And that is just such an important thing that Bruce mentioned about having support. I am blessed with having the most wonderful friends and the most wonderful support group anyone could ever hope for. And they get you through this stuff. Don't do this alone. That's stupid. You need people to help you with this, especially if you're like me and you don't have a spouse or children or someone who could, be there for you. So when I got the call from my patient, my transplant coordinator, she said that there were two options. One was chemo and one was radiation, and then you really freak out. And she said, no, don't freak out. We're not talking like chemo with the needles and you're going to be sick and losing your hair. We're talking about either something called TACE or TARE, TACE or TARE, which is transarterial chemoembolization or transarterial radio embolization, which one of the doctors had mentioned earlier. And so I met with an interventional radiologist who was going to be performing the procedures for me. And luckily, the lesion was very clear on the MRI. And so they decided the best course for me was to do the radio embolization. And I got to tell you, I knew nothing about this. I'd never known anybody with cancer. I have a really good friend I've known since I was 4 who had a transplant. And so I knew I could go to her and ask questions, but she had never had cancer. And so I remember the night before the first treatment, which is called mapping. I was so nervous. My little dog could sense it. And when I got in bed, he put his little cheek right against mine the whole night long because I think he knew I was just terrified. And my best friend went with me to the hospital. And so the mapping is simply where they go in and plan the procedure. They go in and do everything they would do except putting in the radiospheres. And that way they are prepared for it. They know what's where, they can check everything out. So 3 days later, and this all happened so quickly. I mean, the mapping happened. I was, diagnosed August 7th. August 24th, they did the mapping. August 27th, they did the treatment. For the chemoembolization, you can only get one treatment. For the radio, you can get two. And so we went in for my first one, and I at least knew then what was going to happen. Does it feel good having a needle stuck up your groin? No, not at all. But you're in like a little bit of a twilight. They have to be able to talk to you and tell you to take breath and, do all this stuff. It's like, okay, now release the breath, because they're taking pictures throughout this entire thing to make sure it's going the right way. And so, it's like once they put a needle in, you're done. Like Bruce said, get used to needles. You're going to be getting a lot of needles put in you, period. And so I finished the radio embolization, and then they take you to this crazy big machine that somehow just spins around you. I don't even know what it's called. And it can take all those pictures that they had taken and make sure where everything was, and look and make sure the radio spheres are in the right place. And so they were like, everything's great. We'll see you in like 2 or 3 weeks. It is, I guess, a couple weeks. And so I went, the next day I'm at home, and I'm a little uncomfortable just because, I'm very bruised where they stuck needles and stuff. But other than that, I'm feeling pretty good. And so first a nurse calls me to check on me. Oh, I'm great. And then the doctor calls. And so it's like, wow, it's very nice that he's calling to check on me. Yeah, he wasn't calling to check on me. He was calling to tell me that they had actually found an aneurysm that was in my splenic artery. And so I'm like, what? This is craziness now. So I got cancer. Now I've got this aneurysm. What's going on? So we knew I was going back into the hospital for my quote second procedure on September 10th. And when I got there, I said so is it going to be the same as last time? And he said, no, what we did last time actually did everything we needed it to do. We got the whole tumor with the radiosphere, so we're not going to do any of that. We're simply going to treat the aneurysm today. And so, we did that, and they did a coil embolization with that. And it was basically the same as having the Y90 treatment, except they weren't shooting the spheres into me that time. And so, my experience with liver cancer actually turned out to be, it sounds crazy, but probably the best thing that happened to me in 2020, which was such a lousy year. Because if I had not had the cancer, they wouldn't have found the aneurysm, and who knows what might have happened with that. But the best part of all was it made it where my MELD score was going to increase. For some reason, I had gone from having a hideously high number, for my blood work and looking great, to not looking so great. And my MELD score is like an 8, a 10. I think the highest I ever got was like a 12. Oh, good. That won't even get you listed. I was just lucky that my doctor knew how sick I was, because the first time he saw me, my belly looked like I was about to have twins any minute, because I had so much ascites and had been through, all the other stuff, ascites and varices. My liver was a disaster. And so on Valentine's Day, very appropriately, because it made me very happy and I loved it, my MELD score jumped up to being, hey, let's get her near the top for a transplant. And it took a while, but I'm very excited to say that on July 9th, I did have my transplant. And that would not have been possible had I not had liver cancer. And when they did the surgery, Dr. Guerra said, he called my best friend when it was over at 3:30 in the morning. And so he said, her liver, it's basically not doing anything. And my kidneys had been pretty badly damaged, and I'm still working with kidney specialists now to try to get my kidneys back to par. But it would not have happened. And he said, she didn't have months, she didn't have years, she probably had a couple weeks. And when I heard that, I was just horrified that somehow I had gotten that sick. And, I wouldn't be here speaking to you now had I not had that transplant. So it was such a blessing in disguise, even though that sounds crazy that I had cancer, because none of that would have been possible without it. Um, One of the things I do want to share, I think both Don and Bruce had said about just keeping your spirits up. And this may sound totally stupid, but it's what I did as soon as they said I had cancer. I mean, that day I was doing it. I made little notes, little post-it notes, and I stuck them everywhere in my house. And they all were these little positive sayings. I'm one of those people who writes down sayings I hear all the time. And I was just flipping through all my books and looking on my phone where I have some stuff just to make sure I could find, ones that would be perfect. And they were all about things like hope that Bruce said, don't give up hope. When you get to the end of your rope, tie another knot in it and just hang on. And on my front door to this day, I still have two that say, don't give up, never give up. And I'm strong and I can do anything, because it's been difficult for me since the surgery. I've had several different complications. My arm kind of exploded after the surgery. So I was one of those fortunate people who gets that from the IVs, and we're still treating my arm. And so that's kind of a mess 3 months down the road. But, and we're working on my kidneys, like I said. But on the good side, I've lost 63 pounds because I had so much fluid inside of me. So, it's like cancer, unfortunately for Bruce, it's a really tough road. But for a lot of us, I think it's not that end all be all, because there is still a chance that other things will turn out right for you. But please count on your friends. I mean, I I had a group of 61 people that my best friend or I would email, to let them know what was going on when I had my transplant. And their emails and texts and cards and stuff, I don't know what I'd have done without them. I would not have gotten through it. So get yourself a group. You know who your real friends are, rely on them. And that's kind of it for me. So, good luck to anybody who is going through this stuff now. I wish you all the best, and, get those people praying for you and stuff. I had people chanting, "Go kidneys," and suddenly my kidneys improved. It was like, see, forget the Dallas Cowboy cheerleaders. I got the best cheerleaders there are. So, use your friends, use your family, use those people.
Thank you so much, Barb. I think it's really important just to underscore the themes that emerged from all three of your stories, which is that support and love is really important, and it really doesn't matter who it comes from.
Mhm.
And to really ensure that you are caring for yourself and caring for your spirit. And that's tough, when you're facing physical challenges and emotional challenges, but I think it's really the underpinning of how we cope. There are a couple questions. We have maybe a minute or two. So maybe we'll take two questions from the group. One was directed at Dawn, but I think both of you can answer this, Dawn and Barb, which is, how old were you when you were transplanted, and how do you rate your post-transplant quality of life? Which of course is different. Dawn is 9 years out, and Barb, you're just, a few months out. But how would you answer those questions?
I can go first. I'm 9 years, but uh, I was 63 when I had my transplant. And be honest, I'm absolutely wonderful. I'm actually in Tampa, Florida right now. I'm at a boat race. One of my crazy hobbies is hydroplane racing. And I was invited to come down. I'm not working this race, but I worked a lot of races this summer. But when I had my transplant, I often wondered whether or not I could get back to it, and I did. But I feel great. I take my medicine the way I'm supposed to take it. I don't do anything that would ruin the gift that I got. There's just absolutely nothing that I do. Yeah, maybe I shouldn't eat as many sweets as I do sometimes, but I do. My kidneys have had issues, but I always tell my liver doctor, don't worry about my kidneys until my kidney doctor worries about them. The other thing that I'm going to encourage is that you have probably pharmacies that have programs that can help you with the cost of medicine. And I just went through that. They wanted to change one of my meds, my anti-rejection meds, to something that's less invasive to my kidneys, but it was going to cost me a lot of money. And the pharmacy at University of Cincinnati Health said, well, fill out this paperwork and I'm getting the medicine that would have cost me $300 a month for free. And so there's programs out there. Don't be afraid to ask for help. And my health, I feel great. I had a heart valve put in last year. And someone said a heart valve. I said, yes, I like new parts. So, but I feel great. I do whatever I want. And, but I try to take care of myself and listen to my doctors. And so that's me.
And Barb?
For me, I'm just 3 months out now. And that is that first kind of milestone they try to get you to where, things start to ease up a little. I started out when people were asking about how many medications you take. When I left the hospital, there were about 20. We got it up to 25 at one point. And now I'm down to, I think it's like 10 I take. I also have diabetes. So, a couple of those are insulin, but other than that, the tacrolimus is a little brutal on me. I get headaches. Well, I have a headache that just hasn't gone away. So, I do get headaches, but the rest of the stuff, it seems each week we'd be easing off of things. And then, especially as my kidneys were concerned, my kidney specialist then was like, we're stopping this medication, we're stopping that. The meds aren't that bad. You get into a routine, it's no big deal, but I feel so much better. And when people see me, they just can't believe I've had this major a surgery because I'm out walking every day and I used to do 6 miles a day. Now I try to do 7,000 steps, which is a lot when you consider I'm just 3 months out. So, but no, I feel great. I thank God. And like Don said, God bless, my donor. I said I dedicate my life to just doing good and helping raise money for things like the ALF and for getting organ donors. I will do whatever I can because I know how much it helped me.